Hello and welcome to Protect It University. The following is our HIPAA workforce training and must be completed by all workforce members that come into contact with Protected Health Information, or PHI. We have four main objectives with this training. First, our goal is to make you familiar with HIPAA and its requirements. Next, we want to help you understand the basic compliance obligations with both the HIPAA privacy and security rules. Then, we will educate you on how to protect PHI. And finally, we'll inform you on how and where to report a breach. Let's get started. So what is HIPAA? It stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and it's a federal law that addresses numerous healthcare issues. HIPAA was signed into law by President Clinton in 1996, and it contains the privacy and security rules, which are both designed to protect sensitive information known as Protected Health Information, or PHI. HIPAA also includes the HITECH Act, which stands for the Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act of 2009. The HITECH Act expanded HIPAA's coverage to include electronic information and required breach notification rules. Now, let's talk about some key HIPAA terms you should know and understand. The first is PHI, which I've already mentioned. But what is it? PHI is any health information that can be used to identify an individual, which relates to that individual's past, present, or future physical or mental health or condition. PHI is also the provision of health care to an individual or the past, present, or future payment for the provision of health care to an individual which identifies the individual, or for which there is reasonable basis to believe can be used to identify an individual. I know, that's a long definition, but I think you'll get a better understanding for what PHI is if we discuss some specific examples. So PHI can be found in many different places, but what does it include? PHI can be a name, address, telephone or fax number, email address, social security number, a medical record number, a health plan beneficiary number, a financial account, a credit card number, driver's license number, vehicle license plate number, a medical device serial number, an IP address, any biometric identifiers like fingerprints or voice recordings. PHI can be dates related to an individual like date of birth or date of death. It's also a person's photo or any other unique identifying number, characteristic, or code. Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about PHI, and it's obviously important. But as I mentioned earlier, there are some other key terms we need to define, such as use. Use is, with respect to individually identifiable health information, the sharing, employment, application, utilization, examination, or analysis of that information within an entity that maintains it. The next term, disclose, is defined as to release or divulge information by an entity to persons or organizations outside of that entity. Next, authorization, which is the mechanism for obtaining consent from a patient for the use and disclosure of health information for a purpose that is not for treatment, payment, or for healthcare operations. The final term, minimum necessary, is defined as when using any PHI, a covered entity or business associate must generally make reasonable efforts to limit itself to the minimum necessary to accomplish the intended purpose of the use, disclosure, or request. Now, let's talk about who is covered by HIPAA. Covered entities, health plans, healthcare clearinghouses, business associates, and subcontractors of business associates are all covered. Examples of covered entities are doctors, clinics, hospitals, dentists, nursing homes, and pharmacies that transmit data electronically. Business associates are any business or organization that functions on behalf of a covered entity that involves the use or disclosure of identifiable health information. For example, IT companies that service healthcare clients, data warehouse companies, or billing companies are all examples of business associates. Subcontractors, defined as any business or organization working for a business associate and performing a covered function on behalf of the business associate. An example of a subcontractor is a data backup service set up by an IT company for the IT company's own customer. A significant change with HIPAA took place with the establishment of the Omnibus Final Rule, which went into effect on March 26, 2013. This rule modified the HIPAA privacy, security, and enforcement rules to implement statutory requirements of the HITECH Act. One of the most significant changes established that all covered entities, business associates, and subcontractors must meet the same HIPAA compliance requirements that covered entities do, and all parties now share the same downstream liability. It is now more important than ever to ensure that all downstream business associates and subcontractors are compliant and accountable to all upstream parties. The Privacy Rule. What is it? The Privacy Rule protects an individual's right to the privacy and confidentiality of individually identifiable health information. How does the Privacy Rule protect PHI? It limits the use and disclosure, and almost all of which requires the individual to authorize that use or disclosure. The Privacy Rule also outlines the permitted uses and disclosures defined as the release of information to the individual or personal representative for purposes related to treatment, payment, and healthcare operations. Lastly, the Privacy Rule outlines use and disclosure to public interests such as required by law enforcement purposes, public health activities, serious threat to health or safety, or workers' compensations investigations. The rule does apply to all information in all forms, written, spoken, and electronic. So, within the Privacy Rule, how can PHI be used? First, it can be used only as specifically authorized by the patient or the representative of the patient. In addition, information can be used for the purposes of performing job duties such as a nurse or medical office personnel. All use and disclosure must follow the minimum necessary amount of information. This means only use or disclose the absolute minimum necessary information and no more. Not allowed use or disclosure. What is not allowed by the Privacy Rule? For example, accessing PHI just for curiosity is not allowed. Use or disclosure for personal use or for purposes outside of a workforce member's job responsibility is not allowed. And use or disclosure of PHI in violation of a company's own HIPAA policies is also not allowed. Any use or disclosures of PHI that is not allowed is a serious offense and should be treated as such.